The rain hammered against the BMW's windshield like 1,000 tiny fists, and Victoria Chen, CEO of a tech empire worth $300 million, had never felt more powerless. Her phone was dead. Her designer heels were soaked. And somewhere on this desolate stretch of highway outside Portland, her perfectly ordered world had ground to a halt along with her engine. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, mascara running down her cheeks, wondering how someone who commanded boardrooms and made million-dollar decisions before breakfast couldn't figure out how to change a tire in the pouring rain. That's when she saw the headlights. Victoria Chen hadn't cried in years. Not when her company went public. Not when Forbes put her on their cover. Not even when her fiancé left her for someone who actually had time for a relationship. But sitting in that dead car, drenched and defeated, she felt the hot sting of tears she'd been holding back for what felt like a lifetime. The pickup truck pulled up behind her, and through the rain-blurred mirror, she watched a man step out. He didn't have an umbrella. Didn't hesitate. Just walked straight through the downpour like it was nothing more than morning dew. "You okay in there?" His voice was warm despite the cold rain, his knock gentle on her window. Victoria rolled it down, ready to deploy her usual armor of efficiency and self-sufficiency. But something in his eyes, a genuine concern that expected nothing in return, made her defenses crumble. "I don't know what's wrong with it," she admitted, her voice smaller than she'd heard it in years. He smiled, rain dripping from his dark hair. "Let's figure it out together. I'm Marcus, by the way." "Victoria. Nice to meet you, Victoria. Pop the hood for me." She watched through the windshield as Marcus examined her engine with the focused attention of someone who actually cared about solving problems, not just appearing to solve them. His hands moved with practiced confidence, and within minutes, he diagnosed the issue, a loose battery connection, simple enough to fix temporarily. "This should get you to the next town," he said, wiping rain from his face as he returned to her window. "There's a good mechanic about 15 miles up. I can follow you if you want, make sure you get there safe." "You don't have to." "I know," he interrupted gently. "But I'd like to. The roads get tricky up ahead, and it's getting dark." Something about the way he said it, without bravado, without expecting gratitude, made Victoria's chest tighten. In her world, everyone wanted something. Every kindness came with an invoice. "Okay," she whispered. "Thank you." As they drove through the rain, Victoria kept glancing in her rearview mirror at the steady headlights following her. Protecting her. A stranger who had no idea who she was, no idea what she could do for him, helping simply because he could. The mechanic shop was closed, but Marcus knew the owner. Made a call. Within 20 minutes, a gray-haired man named Pete was examining her car properly while Victoria and Marcus waited in the small adjacent diner, the only place still open in this barely their town. "Coffee," Marcus offered, already signaling the waitress. "I should probably," Victoria started, then stopped. Should probably what? Rush back to her empty penthouse. Her inbox that never stopped demanding pieces of her soul. Yes, coffee sounds perfect. They sat across from each other in a cracked vinyl booth, and for the first time in years, Victoria found herself actually talking to someone. Not networking, not negotiating, just talking. Marcus was a single father to a 7-year-old daughter named Sophie. He worked as a freelance carpenter, building custom furniture from reclaimed wood. His wife had passed away 3 years ago from cancer, and he'd moved to Oregon for a fresh start, somewhere Sophie could grow up surrounded by trees and possibility instead of painful memories. "She's my whole world," Marcus said, his hands wrapped around his coffee mug, a softness in his voice that Victoria had forgotten men could possess. "Every decision I make, every job I take, I think about whether it's building the kind of life I want her to see. One where kindness matters more than comfort. Where we help people even when it's inconvenient." Victoria felt something crack open inside her chest. "I don't think I've lived like that in a very long time." Marcus looked at her then, really looked at her, and she felt seen in a way that had nothing to do with her title or her bank account. "It's never too late to start." Pete finished the repairs around 10 o'clock. The bill came to $300, and Victoria handed over her credit card without thinking. Pete ran it, handed it back, and as Victoria signed the receipt, she caught Marcus glancing at the name embossed on the platinum card. Victoria Chen, CEO, Chen Technologies. She waited for it, the shift in his expression, the recalculation of her worth, the sudden interest that always followed recognition. But Marcus just smiled that same genuine smile and asked, ready to head out. Over the next 3 months, Victoria found reasons to return to that small Oregon town. At first, she told herself it was about the client she'd taken on nearby, the expansion opportunity that required her personal attention. But she knew the truth. She was returning for the way Marcus made her feel, not impressive, not intimidating, just human. They fell into an easy rhythm. Coffee at the diner. Walks through the forest where Marcus collected wood for his projects. Dinners where she met Sophie, a bright-eyed girl who asked Victoria questions about computers and space and whether being rich meant you were happy. I don't know, Victoria had answered honestly, kneeling down to Sophie's eye level. I used to think it did. But I think maybe being happy means having people who care about you for who you are, not what you have. Sophie had considered this seriously, then hugged her. Just hugged her. No reason, no transaction, no ulterior motive. Just a pure expression of affection, and Victoria had to excuse herself to the bathroom to compose herself. But it was Marcus who truly undid her. Marcus, who brought her coffee exactly how she liked it but never in expensive cups, just in his chipped mugs that had belonged to his grandmother. Marcus, who listened to her talk about the pressures of her position without trying to fix her or minimize her feelings. Marcus, who taught her how to sand wood until it was smooth, finding meditation in the repetitive motion. You know what I love about woodworking, he said one afternoon in his workshop, guiding her hands along a piece of oak. You can't rush it. You can't throw money at it to make it perfect. You just have to show up, do the work, and trust the process. Victoria realized he wasn't just talking about wood. The turning point came on a Thursday evening. Victoria's board was pushing her to relocate the company headquarters to San Francisco, a move that would increase profits but mean leaving Oregon. Leaving this town. Leaving Marcus and Sophie. She sat with Marcus on his porch, watching Sophie chase fireflies in the yard, and felt a grief so profound it almost stopped her breath. I might have to leave, she said quietly. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Do you have to? Or do you think you have to? What's the difference? He turned to face her, his hand finding hers. Victoria, I don't know much about running. Companies are making millions. But I know about building a life. And I know that you can't build something real if you're always running toward the next thing that's supposed to make you happy. At some point, you have to stop and say, this is enough. This is everything. Victoria looked at Sophie, laughing in the fading light. Looked at Marcus, this man who had stopped in the rain for a stranger and somehow become her home. Looked at her own hands, always typing, always working, always chasing, and realized they were trembling. I'm terrified, she whispered. Of what? That if I choose this, choose you, choose something real, I'll lose everything I've built. Marcus squeezed her hand. Or maybe you'll finally have something you can't lose. Victoria chose love. She restructured her company, appointed a co-CEO, and moved her primary residence to Oregon. The business press called it career suicide. Her competitors celebrated her apparent retreat. But Victoria had never been more certain of a decision in her life. A year later, on a rainy afternoon that mirrored the day they'd met, Marcus proposed in his workshop, presenting her with a ring he'd carved himself from the wood of a fallen oak. Sophie held the actual diamond ring, giggling as Marcus fumbled through a speech about how Victoria had fixed something in him he hadn't known was broken. You showed me that success without someone to share it with is just expensive loneliness, Victoria said, tears streaming down her face. And you showed me that the richest thing in the world is being loved for who you are when you're broken down on the side of the road, when you're not impressive or put together or useful. Just you. They married in the forest, with a reception at the diner where they'd first talked. Victoria wore a simple dress. Marcus wore his best flannel shirt. Sophie was the flower girl and the ring bearer and declared it the best day ever. As they danced in the rain, because of course it rained, Victoria laughed with a freedom she'd never known. She'd spent her whole life building an empire, only to discover that the real kingdom was right here, in the arms of a man who'd stopped in a storm for a stranger, in the smile of a little girl who called her Mama Victoria, in a small town where people knew her name but not her net worth. She was still a CEO. Still successful. Still driven. But now she was also someone who understood that the greatest fortune wasn't in her bank account. It was in coming home to a hand-carved table where the people she loved waited with chipped mugs of coffee and unconditional acceptance. Sometimes, Victoria still drove past the spot where her car had broken down. And every time, she whispered a thank you to the universe for that rain-soaked night when everything fell apart so that everything real could finally fall into place. Because the best things in life aren't the ones you plan for. They're the ones that stop you in your tracks, soaking wet and helpless, and teach you that asking for help isn't weakness, it's the first step toward finding home.